Hello and welcome to this week's episode of My CP Does Not Define Me, where we focus less on the dis and more on the ability of what we can do. Join us every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, live on www.letgoradio.net and on Facebook Live, where I always say, if you can't be good, be bad, but be good at it.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen out there in Facebook land and on www.letgoradio.net. It is D to the J with a roll away. And believe it or not, it is Wednesday at 2 o'clock once again. Yes, the week has come round, and it's time for another exciting episode of My CP Does Not Define Me. Hey, Nikki. Hey, Cindy. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. As you guys come in today, I have got a very exciting guest that I'm going to bring on, and I'm not going to waste any time because I want to get right into this fascinating young lady, Miss Martiza Rodriguez Arsenault, and she is a fantastic individual, and I'm just going to bring her in real quick and introduce her and welcome her to the stage. So let me get her in. Hey, Miss Martiza, how are you?
Hi, DJ. How are you?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for being part of the show. So glad to have you. As everybody comes in, you know, we've got we're live on Let Go Radio. We're live on Facebook Live as well. Would you just do us a favor? Tell us who you are, where you're from, what you do, and I love hearing this. I've heard it before, and I've gotten a chance to talk to you before, but I want our viewers to know all about you. So do us a favor and tell us about yourself, if you would.
Well, thank you for having me. I do appreciate it. I am a psychotherapist. I grew up in Miami, Florida. Florida is my hometown, but about 14 years ago now, I did move to Ontario, Canada. I met my wonderful husband, and I've been here ever since. And basically what I do is psychotherapy. It's my passion. It's what I love, and it's what I'm good at.
All right. Now, I have always been interested in the psyche itself because the mind can do some tricky things, you know, and I look at it as a whole. That 9.5 pound gland that we have up there, scientifically is said if we could use all of it, we could actually harness the power of an atomic bomb, which is kind of freaky to say the least. I mean, but how did you, so I guess my first question is, how did you and when did you decide to get into the psyche itself? What made that your passion? How did that come about?
Well, you know, all I can tell you is I remember sitting in 9th grade and the career counselor came in because when I was in school, 9th grade was still junior high. And so we're going to high school, getting ready for high school, because back in the day it was 10th, 11th, and 12th. And they started asking us what we wanted to do. And I was like, well, I want to be a psychologist. Mm-hmm. And that has driven me and to be honest, I didn't know any psychologists. There's no psychologists in my family, but I've always been a good listener. I've always really enjoyed listening to people and hearing people's stories because we're all fascinating in our own ways. And that just led to my career path.
Was there something in particular, you know, when you got into high school, did you go, man, you know, I can do this? Was there some, because you said there was no psychologist in your family. There was nothing, you know, that kind of, was there anything that bridged the gap, so to speak? Did something happen? Was there a realization point that you could do it and wanted to do it?
You know, that's a great question. And I just think that I made my mind up and I just continued on the course, to be honest with you.
Okay. All right. That's a good, and that's why, again, these questions are not rehearsed. You know, that she doesn't know what I'm going to ask her, and I'm coming straight off the cuff. I always do that with my guest. As I talk with him, got a couple people coming into the show. Hey, Kim, how are you? Hey, Charles, thank you for joining us. If you guys have any questions for Martiza, I feel free to ask. Now, I have to comment on the name because I love it. What I don't know the right word. Like, is it where's the name from? Like, what
Rodriguez Arsenal origin.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I am Latin. Okay, my father is Cuban and my mother is Mexican. So there is where the Martiza Rodriguez came. So, and that's why I grew up in Miami, Florida, in a very Latin environment. And then I married my husband, which is French Canadian, and that's where his name came from, Arsenault.
So you truly have a little bit of everything. Like, you're just like, it's wound up into a ball and it's just there.
Yes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So now I talked to you a little bit earlier as we came onto the show about the power of the mind. Let me ask you this. What fascinates you about the mind the most?
The mind is fascinating, and the more that I learn, and let me tell you, I've been in this field for over 25 years and I'm still learning.
Mm-hmm.
There's the more you learn, it's true what Einstein said, the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know.
Ooh.
And right?
What a great quote. Wow.
It is. And our mind is so powerful, like you said, and it is so expansive. However, we have been taught to safety is priority. Okay. And sometimes the mind will keep us small to keep us safe. And we're really stepping into society now because our society, for the most part, thank goodness, is safe, right? Mm-hmm. There's no bombs. There, we're growing. There isn't widespread poverty like in other countries like in Africa or anything like that. So we're stepping out of that comfort zone. And so that's where you can see the mind start to expand. But sometimes it'll keep us small to keep us safe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, do you mainly work with people with disabilities, or do you mainly work with the able-bodied? Is it a combination of people that you work with?
It's a combination. Mm-hmm. It's a combination. I did work a lot for over 14 years with military, and a lot of military. First of all, military with PTSD, and then family members dealing with the deployments that we had. And obviously those are not disabilities, but PTSD does become a disability because it impacts the quality of their life, right?
That's the see, and this is this is the main reason I wanted to have you on the show right here. You just pointed out something. I love how doctors will say, this is not a disability, or this is not, something is not a disability. When something attacks you, and it, in my opinion, when it comes from the inside and it goes to the mind, and it sucks you down to where you almost become a shell of your former self, that is, for lack of better terms, a disability to me, because it's physically changing you from what you were to what you are. And I think a lot of people, they hide the mind. They hide what they think inside because, well, part of it is fear, and part of it is they want so much to be accepted. Now on the disabled side or the disability side, hundreds of thousands of people that I talk to daily, I just want to fit in. I just want to be accepted. I just want to be normal. Is that a trend that you notice with people with disabilities, or is that all across the globe?
I think that's all across the globe. First of all, DJ, you hit on something, the stigma of it, right? Mm-hmm. And then let's go back hundreds of thousands of years ago.
Okay.
We are tribal people.
Mhm.
We're social beings, and we needed to be part of a group to survive. So if all of a sudden you're left by yourself in the jungle, the probability of you being eaten by a saber-toothed tiger back in the day was a big deal.
Right.
So to be part of a clan, to be part of we've been conditioned that is part of our survival. So we all want to fit in. We all want to be normal.
Okay.
But now the deal is, what is normal? That's just what most people are.
Yeah,
that doesn't mean that's the best way to be, right?
So I mean, technically, just to ask this question, and this is the question I want to get out there, because I don't know, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I'm not even sure if you know the answer, being a psychologist. What is technically normal? Is there a such thing as a normal, or is that just a phrase?
Okay, normal is a statistical term in statistics, and there's a bell curve. And normal is, I think it's been many years since I studied, it's like where 90% of us all kind of fall in. So it's a statistical curve term. That's all it is. So there's no quality associated with normal. That's what it's quantity.
So this is the first time that anybody has said it's a statistical curve. And I get it, because it's all based on number of how people act and what they do. So when society does something, and if they do it for long enough, and if enough people do it, does that become a normalcy? Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's unfair, I think, really, because I think that teaches people that something's normal when it's really not. Is that wrong? I mean, you understand where I'm going?
Right. Normal really does not technically equate with good. Okay. Normal is what most of us do. Now, as you see society changes, our normal starts to change because more of us change, right? So I think it's very important that we take a step back, and normal does not necessarily equate with good or the best.
So,
and if you think the most successful people are not normal, quote unquote, because they're outside the bell curve.
I love that. That's it. It's just, I guess, my thing, and my psychologist, I remember, because I was in therapy at a very young age, because I had a traumatic childhood, and the whole thing. And it just, I love how I had one therapist that didn't ask those normal questions. She asked, how do you feel? What do you feel? What do you think? And when you when you individualize it, it becomes the pathway to repair a damaged psyche, or when someone is hurting. I think when you individualize it and you don't make it much more about society and what society thinks, I think you're able to heal much faster. And I believe that we as people, because you said it at the very beginning, we're taught. Our parents teach us something, and we follow that. At a very early age, where this is what you do. Don't touch the stove. You got to dress one leg at a time, and you got to put your shirt on, and you got to go. Now, when we're out in public, don't you be bad. You've got to be good and make sure that you're calm, and you can't go crazy when in your mind you're just going, oh my God, I can't take it anymore. And you just want to run around and go completely nuts. So how much is it the parental impact? Where are we actually being ourselves at all? Or are we being what we were taught to be, and we have no idea who we are because we're trying to be what our parents told us?
DJ, that is a great question. So most of us are who our parents and others in our society have taught us. Our teachers, our neighbors, and anything like that. Now it's for us to get to a certain point in our development and in adulthood to start to say, you know what? I don't agree with that. Or you know what? I'm going to have my own thought process. And does this really work for me? Okay. And some people never get there. And some people are scared of that because now that means also you're going outside of the safety comfort zone and you have to think for yourself. Right?
So we've got a comment here from Charles Wilton, and he's a good friend of mine, watches the show a lot. I have PTSD due to the foster system myself. Has been broken and put back together over and over. A normal is not normal. We are the product of the environment, and that's very true because, and this is kind of what I was getting into. How do you find when you're in a system for so long, just like Charles was talking about, when you're in a system for so long, or you're in foster care, or you're jumping from place to place, how do you find yourself when you don't have a chance to stay in one place for very long?
Now that's extremely challenging because first of all, one of the problems there is that most of the people that are coming out of foster care are very young, right? They're being pushed out at the age of 18. Our foster care system is usually not great. They don't have the support to get them ready to become adults. And even now in our society right now, childhood is extending to beyond 18. So many 18-year-olds just simply do not have the ability or the skills yet to make adult decisions. So that puts them in a very difficult situation because what is the most helpful is to find a person, a mentor, somebody that they can rely on, somebody that they can say, please help me with that. Just tell me how to do things. So that's really, really important.
So now we're kind of getting into the support system and actually having, and I've talked so many times before with one of my mentors, Winnie Wilson, who, got me into the show, and 45 episodes later, I'm going, wait a minute, this thing is blown up. And when I knew you were going to be on my show, I circled it because I went, I cannot wait for this show because I was so excited. Because you have those psychologists or those people that go, I see. Yes, I understand. And they seem to agree with everything you're saying, but you're really not getting anywhere. You're not delving in or diving into the issue because you're fighting it. And I think people think because they're not able to do something or because they don't do it society's way, that there's something wrong with them, and they're taught because you don't do this way, or we don't do this way. I mean, there were, thousands of people that run around, naked with no clothes on. Not that I'm going to do that, but in those days, that was the norm. So it evolved. It became what was, I would say, they took in the safety factor, and they took in now, am I going to hang from a tree with a 70-foot rope with no cables? I mean, I might, but I'd be on something. I can tell you that. I don't want people to get in their mind that they're not normal or they're not something because they do something a certain way. I think the individuality, you have to find that. You talked about it. You have to find it within yourself, and that takes time. And some people that are 80 years old have been sheltered so long and have been, I'm going to go ahead and say it, manipulated for so long that they haven't exercised their brain to go, how do I figure this out for myself? So how do you get out of that stereotype or that area when you've been manipulated for so long, whether it's foster care or whether it's the situation you're in. We only get one set of parents. They can decide whether they want us or not, and that's traumatic in ourselves. How do we truly find ourselves?
Oh, that's a very deep question. So, first of all, you have to have courage, right? To look into ourselves, to look into yourself. And so, I want to back up a little bit. As human beings, we need that combination of the environment, our support system, and also being true to ourselves, right? It's a delicate balance for everybody. And sometimes we're just pushed to the core, like maybe somebody in foster care. There's nowhere else for them to look. So they find that courage within them to kind of start deciding, you know what, I can do this. It's much easier though with support, 100%. Okay. But let's go back. They did a study a few years ago, and they found that the one thing that makes people successful is grit. They took into account education and intelligence and networking and money. The person that has grit and does not give up is a successful person.
Now, how many?
And I don't care if you have a disability or not. If you have that grit, you're going to be successful.
And how many times have you heard that phrase, never give up? And there it is right there, folks. So what she's saying is that determination, that push through to get through those obstacles that we've talked about. I've talked about it on several shows, but I want to read this out loud. Kimberly says this: I was in special ed all of my life, and because of this, I've been judged as slow. But most slow people are extremely smart. Now, there's two parts to this comment. Okay, I was in special ed all my life. I don't like the term special ed. Okay, I want to stop right there because people learn differently. There are audio learners, there are visual learners, there are hands-on touch, there are there's memorization, and you've got, some people can look at something one time and go, I got it, and you go, what? I mean, so special ed is where I think it should be a difference in learning. Now, the second part of this, I've been judged all my life as slow. Now, this is another one of those terms, and I'm glad she said it. How do we as doctors, and I say we like I'm a medical professional, but not me myself. You're technically a doctor because you're a doctor of the mind. You delve into all sorts of paranormal and normal and this and that and what makes the brain go and how does it. How do we as doctors or people as doctors get these terms to say we're slow or we're stagnant or we're these medical terminologies, and they throw them out at people? How do you get around that? Because that right there is true. If somebody's judged as slow, that's going to hurt them and that's going to make them feel a certain way. And then do they think it or do they come out of it? You know what I'm saying? Does it make sense?
It does make sense. I just want to step back though, just so I don't portray myself differently. I have a master's degree in counseling. Okay. So I'm not a doctor.
Okay. Sorry about that.
But that being said, doctors are just human beings, and we like to categorize people into neat little boxes so that it's easy for us to understand. The problem is, as human beings, we're multidimensional beings, and we can do so many different things at one time. Now, I agree with what your listener said, because Einstein was technically slow. He was dyslexic, and he was the smartest person. So, one of the smartest people on earth thus far. And what advantage did that give him, being dyslexic, which is technically a disability, is he thought differently. He could see things in it from an angle that most normal people could not see. And because of that, that gave him an experience.
You still with us? I'm not sure if yeah, there we go. Let me give it just a second here, guys.
DJ?
There we go. Yep, you're back now. I think it clicked out just for a second. You were saying because he was dyslexic, he was able to see things differently. Please continue.
And because he was able to see things differently in a way that normal people could not see it, he came up with all these wonderful theories and advanced society in a way that people had, somebody hadn't done in decades.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So actually, not being normal was a great thing for Einstein, right?
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. Now, I was talking about my mentor earlier, and she asked this question. Edwina Wilson said this: what is special ed and what is slow? It's so disappointing that society has named it as such. And then she goes on to say this: it's sad because people are placed in those positions and grow with it, but oftentimes many of the individuals are not. It needs to be changed. And I going off of what Miss Wilson just said, and this is the reason I brought this up. When I was diagnosed with cerebral palsy, I was diagnosed at 9 months. Okay. Now at 2 years old, at 1 year old, I was speaking full sentences but I couldn't set up and I couldn't point. But you show me a picture and you see a boy on a swing, and most people would say boy or swing. And I would say a boy swinging. And the doctor goes, okay, this kid's got talent. Like, he's one, but he's speaking full sentences. But because I couldn't set up, they wanted to put me in special ed because of the way I looked and the way I did things. And I think that is society's fault. And that's where we need to change it, exactly like Miss Wilson is saying. You can't base it if a child doesn't need it. There's nothing wrong with a class that goes to a person's pace. I like pace classes. I don't like special ed. I believe that every person in this world learns at a certain pace. And you can't tell me that one person is slow, that one person is medium, because my chair is fast. I got plenty of walls to prove that. And I got plenty of people to tell. But I think Miss Wilson is absolutely right. I believe that it needs to be changed, because when we as society, when we put something out there that's negative and we embrace the negative, it's going to become negative. But you've got to find the positive in the main situation. And I think that people are so quick to judge someone based on what they see rather than being based on what they know.
And you're right. As children are open sponges. So if you tell them they're smart, they're going to believe they're smart. If you tell them they're slow or there's something wrong with them, they're going to believe that. Okay. And those are called automatic thoughts in psychology. And then what happens? Those are our filters. So if you believe you're smart, well, all of a sudden you become smarter. If you believe there's something wrong with you, then, there starts the problems, right? And another thing I wanted to share with you is there's 7 or 9 different types of intelligences. Okay. And we know some, like physical intelligence. There's mathematical and logical intelligence. There's intuitive intelligence. There's a whole bunch of different ones, and I can't name them all right now. And in school, we like logical. But in society, what do we revere? Physical. We pay our athletes millions of dollars. But I'm sure even some of them feel dumb because in school they were told maybe because they didn't read as good, but they have this wonderful physical intelligence, right?
That's an amazing. You hit it, and again, it's classified. We keep categorizing people, and you cannot categorize a person because they do many things well. Not everybody is good at everything.
Right.
When I studied martial arts and I started teaching, I found that one of the most common phrases that people would say is, if it was easy, everybody could do it. But I think that those become those, you're talking about the physical intelligence, for the mental intelligence, that intuitive, those become conditioned responses, and we look for that barrier that we're going to hit. Most gifted people in all of history were or had some kind of disability or challenge. I love that. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Well said, Charles. That's very true. And there's nothing. Everybody has challenges. Everybody has challenges that they face. Everybody has problems that they face. And I've said that time and time again. J.P. Jackson said this: it's better than what it used to be 30 years ago when I was a junior, when I was in junior high. There was no such thing as mainstream classes for those of us with disabilities. We were automatically put in special ed because you had a disability. You had class together. You ate lunch together. You did everything together. It was almost like they wanted to keep us separated from everybody else. And I agree with that. I mean, just because someone does something differently, it doesn't mean there's something wrong with them. And I think society, yes, it's gotten better. It has gotten better, and I do agree with that. But it's so wrong to just stick us in a room like a bunch of caged animals and not let us feel and be and experience. I mean, I don't know. As a in psychology, do you see that a lot? I mean, is it sheltered, or is it because you've seen those parents that, oh, no, you're not talking to my child. I'll talk for my child. I'm not going to let my child talk for themselves. No, right. I won't do that. They're afraid.
Well, and part of the problem with education is that our system is archaic. This education system was set up to get us ready for the Industrial Revolution so that we could go into factories and do the same job day in and day out. And life has changed so much, but the education system has not kept up with the times. And you're right. Most people have different needs, all the way from, somebody who's labeled, who has, different ways of learning, all the way to people who are gifted, right? Mm-hmm. And everybody in between. And we're not addressing the individual needs.
Exactly. I think it needs to be on an individual basis. So what if it takes time? But mm-hmm. There are 3 comments here I want to get to, and they're powerful. Kimberly said this: to this day, if someone reads to me, I understand it better than if I read it. Is there something wrong with that? For me to answer that question, I would say no, because again, I said at the beginning of the show, everybody learns differently. So that auditory, I believe I'm saying that right. When you hear it, you're more receptive to it, and your brain sucks it up like a sponge. To where if you look at the words on the paper and you see them, they jumble, and they tend to, you can read them, but it doesn't click. But when you hear it read, and it's also the voice that does it, it clicks to it. Nikki,
can I say something to that, DJ?
Sure.
And now there's a whole industry that realizes it, right? Audible books. They realize there's a whole segment of society that processes things better, and they've capitalized on that. And now people can listen to books.
Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things I have to be careful with, because if I listen to audiobooks, I go to sleep. And it all depends on the voice for me. That's what does it. Nikki Tony said, I feel like when we are placed in the special education classroom, they place you in a box. That's very true. That's exactly what I was talking about earlier, the caged animal. Again, Miss Edwina Wilson said this: as I look at things now, it's so wrong with how divisions in the schools. I feel that the individuals are separated from classes they need to be in versus what they look like, or they are they should be. Let me see, make sure I'm reading this right. Should be based on their looks. In my opinion, individuals can be held back from learning and being educated more when being divided from looks and being in what they call a special ed class. Well said, Miss Wilson. That's very true. I think that they're very much left out of those, I would say, necessary things, because you said it before. Children are sponges, and between, if I'm not mistaken, between the ages of 8 and 15, 3 to 15, they suck up that knowledge and it's there, and it imprints on them as individuals, and it sticks with them. Little kids don't forget anything. They remember everything. And when you label them or you place them as a special ed learner, or we're going to put you in here and we're going to color pictures, yeah, that's good for them for a while, but what is it doing for them? How is it stimulating them? What are they accomplishing, instead of just sticking them in a box in a room, like Nikki said earlier and Miss Wilson said earlier? Got better, but still not where it needs to be. Division is still real. School needs more inclusion as well as society, and stop making differences in individuals due to looks or dives being used. Well said. Let me see. Goodness, we're getting comments coming in left and right now. I'm that way with the Bible sometimes. The narrative makes more sense hearing rather than reading it. And that's the same way with me. I'm very much when I hear somebody say something, it comes to me like glue. And I'm just like, when you get that person like that James Earl Jones voice or that Morgan Freeman voice, and they've got my attention, and it's, and they're reading something, I'm like, I remember the first time I heard Charles Dickens. It was like somebody was reading it, and somebody read A Christmas Carol aloud, and I'm like, and I noticed my attention was, boom. I mean, it was just like right there. And that's when I figured out what type of person I am. A lot of times when Miss Wilson is speaking, I'll kind of zone in immediately. She'll say something, and I'll notice myself getting closer to the computer screen because I'm enthralled by what she's saying, or, when she's, showing something or teaching something, it comes from that part of the brain where you pick up the audio signals better than you do the visual signals. Yes, some individuals have challenges in learning and growth, but parents and the staff and teachers have to come together to determine what classes are best for the students, and not just assume. It saddens my heart to see things happen. That's where I think, and we're getting into a lot here, guys, and I knew this show was going to do this. I believe that counselors are important. I believe that counseling is important. I believe that every person in this world, whether they have a problem or not, should seek a counselor. And I'll tell you, because to be able to talk to someone about life is much better than to hold it in. I didn't realize as a child I buried things. And that messed me up as an individual because I exploded. And the littlest thing will set off that explosion. You can be sitting in a lunchroom. I remember it. I used to sit in the lunchroom at a table by myself. We were talking about it. I never used to sit with people. And there was a kid, he was throwing food at me, and he threw food at me and threw food at me. And I said, you throw one more piece of food at me, you're going to regret it. I was in my chair, and he threw that last piece of bread, and it hit me right here. And when it hit me, it was like a boulder that hit my shoulder. I turned around, I picked up the table from one end to the other. It was a square table, and I threw it across the room. And the next thing I knew, I was on top of him like this. Mm-hmm. And I saw the look on his face and everybody else's face. And it was like somebody flipped a switch. I said, and I told, when I went to the office, that was one of the only times I got in trouble. I went to the office and I told the principal, I told him, if you throw one more piece of food at me, I'm going to snap. That's going to be it. Mm-hmm. And the principal looked at the kid, and the kid is just terrified. He has this look on his face like, oh, dear God, what have I done? I've awoken Satan himself. Good God. The principal looked at him, and I remember this is kind of when things changed for me, because I was not bullied in school a lot. I was not. We had this one guy, and it was in early third or fourth grade. The principal looked at him and he said, "Did he not tell you not to throw food at him?" He said, "One thing I know about DJ, he is very capable of speaking very well. And you chose to throw food." And the other kids, when he came in, who threw the food? The other kids pointed to the one kid that was doing it. And it was like he just became so small in that moment because he was just doing it to get attention, to get a rile. But when you have it happen to you so many times, and you have it, happen to you over and over again, you can only take but so much before that snap happens. But that's why I think people need counselors. And I think because there are things that sometimes we don't even know as individuals that are bothering us. And that's especially in young female teenagers. I have learned that women, and I'm saying this nicely, they don't always know what is wrong. And as a married individual, I will tell you now, I will ask my wife, honey, what's wrong? Nothing. Okay, I'm just going to back away over here and let you figure that out, because I can see something, or I assume I see something. So I'm going to just let you figure it out. I'm here if you want to talk, let them. But I think that every individual needs someone to talk to, because instead of bottling it up, instead of making that, you need to make that connection with somebody. Now I want to ask you this, because this is one that's been on my mind for a while. Why do some people relate better to females than they do to males? I could never relate to a male counselor, and I think it was because of my past, but I'm not sure. I think that's what it was.
It could be the past. So masculine tendencies tend to be rough, right? Mm-hmm. Feminine tendencies tend to be softer. Women, this is just a generalization, of course. There's masculine women and feminine men. But they tend to be more of the caretakers. They tend to listen better. What is the role of a man usually? Suck it up. Don't cry, right? Mm-hmm. In many occasions. I think, and also if you've had a rough father or a father who has told you to suck it up, you're not going to trust the male counselor as much, right? Because you're going to relate and generalize those aspects to a male.
Mm. So it's more of the softer touch, so to speak.
I think so.
To be able
now, there could be other reasons, maybe somebody was hurt by a man or by a woman, and that's why they want vice versa. But for the most part, that's what I think.
Do you feel that people with disabilities hold more in because of what they deal with on top of their disability? Because they think they can't let it out because they're going to be persecuted no matter what they do?
You know what? That is a high probability, because if they want to fit in, they don't want to bring attention to things that might be, again, quote unquote, out of the norm. Mm-hmm. They don't want to be perceived as weak. And unfortunately, in our society, we still have this perception that emotions are weak, right? And I was just telling a young boy, I said, you're in counseling now so that you can learn how to deal with your emotions. Because if you don't deal with your emotions, and emotions are like waves, they come in and out. Sadness comes in and out, anger comes in and out, happiness comes in and out. Nothing stays forever. But I told him, if you don't learn how to manage those emotions, then you're going to suppress them. And eventually, as you get older, you can suppress them, by working, becoming workaholic, drugs, alcohol, all those things. If we learn to manage our emotions and talk about them exactly like you're saying, DJ, then we get them out of our head. Because when we have a thought in our head or a scenario in our head, it's way worse sometimes in reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
We make things worse.
I used to do that. Oh God, that was my biggest. I would always blow the thing up. It's going to be so bad. Every time I would go to the doctor, it's going to be surgery. It's going to be surgery. It's going to be surgery, because there was a pattern of it. But I want to get this comment here. Don Hunter said this, and this is a very common thing. I was told, don't feel sorry for yourself. Others are worse off, which they are. That's true. But I want to just to say something my mentor said. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be unhappy. It's okay to be frustrated, but you can't stay there. You can't stay in that mode of how you feel. I can talk to my mentor about anything. I could call her up at 2 a.m. because it's just the relationship that we have. Now, it took time to build it. Actually, I know I can talk to her about after 2 days, but I don't want to seem cocky, but it just, me, I never realized I shut things down, and I did that, because look at what you do have. Like you said, the workaholic, too busy working to think of other issues. And this is, oh wow, this one's good here too. I also feel like if it's a female, she would think that men would be for men. It's about relationships and vice versa. With males thinking the same about not having a female, in my opinion, how do you determine which would be best based on the call of duty in hand? That's a good question.
So my answer to this is the gender is not as important as, do you click with the person? Like, obviously you clicked with your mentor. Mm-hmm. That is what's important. Do you click with that person? Do you trust that person? Do you feel that that person is going to accept you and not judge you? That's really the foundation for a relationship, which luckily you are so lucky and blessed to have, DJ.
Mm-hmm. So is it the same thing with the counselor, to whereas that feeling of acceptance and clicking, you have to accept with that person?
Yes, I tell people, even if they're the best counselor in that particular area, if you don't click with them, find somebody you click with.
I don't know. Miss Wilson's always been that, she can relate. She can relate to me because, she's a mom. She's been through it, and she does it all. It's more, I think, when you're able to, like you said, fully connect and tell that person anything, because I think the true thing in counseling, and I'll say this, is honesty. If you're not honest in counseling, you're not going to get anywhere, because you're avoiding the true issue. And I know we've got a little bit of time left in the show, but I want to ask you this. What would you say to someone that's on the outside trying to get in, trying to find a counselor? What would you say to them, and they're being told, "I'll just suck it up, just deal with it"? What would you say to that person that's reaching out, or that needs to reach out, but that's afraid to?
Well, in this case, we have to go back to the grit, is don't give up. Sometimes a good friend, somebody in a group, as long as they listen to you and they validate you, that's what's important. Don't give up. in trying to make those connections.
Mm-hmm.
The ones who are telling you that, push them aside and continue to find your tribe. I always say, I like that. Find your tribe. Find the people who accept you, who love you, who support you in your growth.
Mm. That's well said. I definitely want to have you on again. I honestly want to bring you back next week because I feel like there's so much unfinished. And it's kind of like the counseling session. You know, you have that breakthrough, and then she's like, "Oh, your hour's up." You know, but there's always next time. There's always, keep searching and keep trying to really let it out, because the truth is you can't hold it in. And here's one here. Please also let the listeners know it's also okay to seek counsel. No one knows everything.
Right.
I mean, that's you have to, sometimes you've got to go to somebody. Mm-hmm. Sometimes my mind is so full of stuff. Sometimes I just got to let it out. Sometimes I'm just going to call, and I don't know why I'm calling. There have been times I will call somebody. I say, something's on my mind, but I can't figure it out. Can I just talk to you? Can you just kind of hear this and kind of see where I'm going? There's nothing wrong with seeking counseling. There's nothing wrong with seeking something out to find out what's going on in here. Because this thing, you got to be careful. It's powerful. It will mess you up if you let it. But if you keep it, clean, and you keep it, hydrated, and you find the right people to connect with, because it's about that connection, I think that's a powerful thing. Would you mind, Miss Martiza, just leaving a final message for our listeners that are on Let Go Radio, and also just maybe that are out there wondering if they should counsel or not, or if they need help? Can you leave a message for our listeners?
Yes. You know what? It actually takes courage to find a counselor or to want to even work on your own stuff, and to dig deeper inside yourself for that growth and transformation. That is courageous. And to pat yourself on the back whenever you're ready to do that. We have thought of it because of the stigma as there's something wrong, and on the flip side, it takes a lot of courage. So just recognize that.
Well, I definitely want to have you on again. It's been an honor having you on the show today. I've learned so much just in this 50 minutes of talking to you. I do the same thing from time to time. I only found 2 people that I feel a strong connection enough to talk to them. And sometimes that's all it takes, but eventually you can get more if you feel that connection. Miss Wilson said this to the council: please share if you've come across individuals wanting to seek counsel and they may have changed their mind, and why. That's a good question.
That's a good question. Well, because sometimes we dig deep, and when we start digging, they still have that concept that there's something wrong with them. And really what I hope is there's nothing wrong with anybody. It's about acceptance. And sometimes we just have to take responsibility and say, you know what? Maybe I can just do it better. To accept things without judging yourself as wrong. And I think that's why some people might not want to keep going.
Now, say that again. To accept things. Say that again, please, if you would.
So it's really important to accept ourselves and others, but especially ourselves, as maybe we're not doing something the best way. That's okay. To learn from it, to see it as an opportunity to learn from it, rather than judging ourselves as we did something wrong, we did something, stupid or anything like that. Just see it as a growth opportunity for change versus as doing something wrong or somebody being wrong.
I look at, a lot of people will say I failed at something. I never look at a failure as an actual failure. I look at it as a different opportunity to do something a different way. And I think that's a main piece of what learning from something means. Everybody makes mistakes, but it doesn't mean you can't learn from it and try again next time.
That's right. And quote unquote failure teaches us resilience, doesn't it?
Oh, that's enough again, because you're coming back from something. It didn't work out this time, so we're kind of getting that dust on us, getting that armor, so to speak, to be able to take the cracks, so to speak, and the scrapes and the bumps and the bruises, because we're toughened.
Right.
And I believe in that. So how can we reach you on social media, just to get a hold of you if we want to talk to you or want to just reach out to you? What's the easiest way?
Well, I do have a Facebook page. It's called Martiza Rodriguez Arsenal. And I have a professional page on there. You can always reach me through there.
Okay. All right. I love this. I think this is it has been a great show. It's been an honor having you. Let me just say this really quick. Again, Miss Wilson, it will make you push even more to never give up. And I think that's a great ending right there. These 3 words, to never give up. There are times in our life where we face adversity. There are times in our life where we face things and it looks like an insurmountable odd. But everything has a way of working itself out. We may not see it at this point, but everything happens for a reason. And you have to kind of take the good with the bad and kind of roll with the punches, so to speak, but you don't stop, because there's always a way to get something done. Sometimes you have to step out of that box and take a look at the big picture and not look at where you are, but where you're going to be. You have to dust yourself off and try again. Very well said. Let me say this, guys. You can reach me at Facebook at DJ Carter Jr. You can reach me on Instagram at MyCP Does Not Define Me. You can reach me on Twitter, MyCP Does Not Define Me at Minion Sports. You can reach me on YouTube, MyCP Does Not Define Me, Chairmaster Games, and Worth the Wait, Cooking with DJ Carter. You can reach me on my blog at CarterDJ85 at Wix.com. Please, if you want to be a guest on the show, you can email me at CarterDJ85 at gmail.com. And I will say this to you before I play my intro. The only thing you can't do is the thing you don't try. Remember, you will see lots of people tell you over and over, you can't do something, but the only way you can't do it is if you don't try and you don't give it your all. Thank you so much, Miss Martiza, for being on the show. I really appreciate it. We'll be right back with you next Wednesday at 2 p.m. for My CP Does Not Define Me. We'll see you next week.
All right, everybody. That's going to do it for this week's episode of My CP Does Not Define Me. But don't worry, you can catch us again next Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on www.letgoradio.net and on Facebook and YouTube at My CP Does Not Define Me. Remember, I'm your host, D to the J with the roll away. And if you can't be good, be bad. But be good at it. We'll see you next week.